Hey everyone, it's Josie here. I'm currently a freshman at the University of South Carolina studying hospitality management in hopes of becoming an event planner or possibly going into retailing. Today I'm going to be interviewing my boyfriend Grayson Andraney, who recently started reselling vintage clothing. He sells these clothes to people college age and even those in high school. So I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce himself.
Yeah, like Josie said, Grayson Andraney. I run Divine Vintage, which is a vintage clothing resale page, as well as just kind of anything resale that would sell that people would be interested in. I also do a lot of collegiate apparel. Obviously, being a student at USC and being right in the heart of all that, it's very easy to reach out to people that would be interested in those type of clothes, as well as kind of a trend or fad that has started with vintage clothing, but that also I think will always be in style, especially in certain niches. Um, so yeah, it's been a lot, especially in the last month. Starting college, just about the same time I started Divine Vintage, was a lot to handle, especially in the first week. But it's been fun. It's awesome, and I'm excited to explain a little bit more today about the business and as well as answer some questions that I think Josie has laid out. So that's all.
So actually, I was going to ask you, how has it been balancing college and running your business?
Tough, to be brutally honest. Still definitely trying to figure it out now. Almost third week done of college. It would be second full week, but it's been a lot for sure. Trying to make sure that obviously school to me always comes first. Uh, you know, family obviously always comes first, but when it comes to school and running a business, school comes first because I think education is very important, and making sure that my grades are on top, and that I'm maintaining it in the classroom, which is ultimately what's paying for me to go to college, is what I find most important. But then again, you have to look back and realize, well, hey, you also run a business, and you're the person that signed yourself up for this, so you got to make sure you're pulling your weight on that side too. And just like with academics, if I'm gonna try to maintain an A or high B in all my classes, at the same time I've got to carry that over to my business, and make sure that I'm responding to people, or that I'm home when they need to pick their order up, or that I can deliver it to their dorm room if it is somebody that you know bought something from me that also goes to USC. That I'm consistently posting clothes, that I'm thrifting or putting in orders that's going to get me good clothes. It translates, just like I said, right from academics. I have to make sure that I'm pulling my weight there too if I want to continue to grow as well as currently have a successful business.
So you mentioned that it can be a little bit tough with school, and I know that you're studying business. So how do you think that running your own business right now is going to help you in the long run with what you're studying?
Um, well, that's definitely a multi-layer question, I guess you could say. But I've always kind of had a business mindset. So being in the business school kind of solidifies a lot of the things that I've already learned, or that I always kind of wondered, going through economics and learning about supply and demand, as well as, business calculus, going through management science, which is a class that I'm taking that teaches you all about Excel. It translates right over to me personally having to create spreadsheets that deal with my inventory and my sales and my expenses. So I mean that goes hand in hand. Literally, I use Google Docs and Google Sheets to keep track of all my stuff, but the commands in Google Sheets are almost the exact same as Microsoft Excel. So it's really cool, even from a sense of that I get to learn a lot of the commands that are used in Excel that I can simply translate right over to Google Docs and use to keep track of a lot of my business things. But then, as far as being a business student now, not what I've already learned or what is helping me currently, being that business student that will go through all of the courses that are laid out at Darla Moore, and all of the opportunities that are presented that would help you start a business through Darla Moore. not even already having one started is really exciting. You know, I know there's tons of opportunities at Darla Moore and tons of people that really are willing to help and are there to help you start your business, or they're there to help you, you know, become successful. So it's really cool that I've already got a business that I can work on for a year or two, and then, you know, come junior, senior year, those opportunities might present themselves, and I might have a whole team of people just waiting on me to, you know, help expand. Maybe not like Josie said, maybe not run a company straight out of Instagram, but run a company out of, you know, a brick and mortar shop, because that is ultimately the goal, to open up a shop and people just be able to come in and shop and try clothes on and not have to just see what they're buying through a TV screen, or I shouldn't say TV screen, through a phone screen.
So you're doing your own inventory right now.
Right, yeah, it's tough, and it's one of those nitpicky things that, you know, growing up I always heard, you know, I'm sure your mom does it at work. They probably have to inventory a lot of things they get in. But, you know, growing up here, and my stepdad always talking about, well, the next 2 weeks we have to inventory, which always seemed like a kind of once a year, twice a year thing, where instead of being, you know, at work from 8 in the morning to 5, or from, you know, 9 to 5, he was at work from 7 to 7, you know, and inventorying in a big business, you know, adds 5-6 hours to a workday for a couple weeks, you know, maybe 2, you know, might take a whole month. So it's definitely one of those tedious things that every business has to do. You're not going to keep track of what you have or what you're making if you don't keep inventory. So it's definitely one of those necessary things, but it's one of the most annoying things to do. But in the end, when, you know, clothes are being sold, or when somebody wants something, I don't have to go search for that item. I don't have to be home in order to be able to see that item. I can simply, you know, like I said earlier, hop on Google Docs, Google Sheets, which is what I use, and find the item in whatever sheet it might be located in, and I can tell them, you know, what size it is and what I'm wanting to sell it for. But then also on the back end, I have my minimum sale price that I would be comfortable selling it for, and the maximum sale price, because to me, I don't want to ask too much for an item, because I think it's very important that when a customer buys something from you, that they feel that it's a fair price. So that's like when people ask me about a piece and they ask me the price, I never tell them a set price. You know, I always have that price in mind, but I want to hear first what they think the price is worth. So then, you know, ultimately the customer's at the forefront, and they can almost decide to an extent what price they're going to pay. And then it also, that inventory sheet also shows me what I paid for the item. So, you know, let's say that I wanted to sell an item for $25, but someone wanted to buy it for, you know, a little closer to 15. And I could say, you know, meet me in the middle at 20, or I could say maybe just add a little bit and go to 17. And, you know, that might be $7-8 less than I was wanting to get. But at the same time, I can look at that inventory sheet, and if I only paid $3 for the item that I thrifted, or $7 or $8 from ordering it in a big bundle, then, you know, I can say, well, yeah, 15's fine, or yeah, 17's fine, because I can still make sure that I'm getting a decent profit, which a lot of the times I consider a decent profit doubling my money back. You know, so a shirt for $7, or let's just say $7.50, I would preferably like to sell for 15 to get that double profit back. But yeah, that's inventory helps me keep track of all those things.
So you're mentioning the prices that you find these pieces for. I'm curious, where do you find these pieces that you're selling?
So a lot of it is definitely from like bulk orders, big, you know, just get big boxes or really big bags rather of, you know, upwards of 30 pieces in a bag, and, you know, sometimes I might have 4 or 5 bags come in at once. Some being a little less items because they're bigger or bulkier things like jackets or maybe even pants, different things like that.
So do you have one supplier that you constantly buy from, or?
Yeah, so for the most part, I've done most of my bulk orders or orders in general from a guy in Washington. Jackson is his name. out of Washington. He runs Loveless Vintage, so shout out to him. But he also kind of helps me. It's mutual, I would say. I help him, he helps me, but it allows him to sell clothes because he actually thrifts full time, resells vintage clothing full time. So it allows him to go through and process a lot more clothing because he's selling such large increments to me. But it's also definitely a price cut on his end because he is selling it to me so that way I can also make a profit. And then there's just a couple other people that I both plan to buy from and also have bought from. And then, thrifting, local Goodwill is always a great thing, or, local thrift stores. Even Plato's Closet, I wouldn't necessarily consider a thrift store, but, it's a resale business that still has very fair pricing. So I do get a lot of clothing from them. Also, Thrift Avenue, like I mentioned, a thrift store. It's a thrift store in Casey, South Carolina, that I can get a lot of things from. They're cool over there. So yeah, there's a lot of places I source from, and a lot of places that I haven't even begun to dive into that would even possibly be sources.
I find it so interesting because what usually takes people hours to go in a thrift store and find, you're doing that for them and posting on your Instagram page for them to just, it's much more convenient than them going to thrift, which I think is a very innovative idea that you don't see a lot of people doing. So so that's about all we have time for. So I just want to thank Grayson for coming on and explaining how his business is going. And if you're looking for a thrift or vintage resale page, just go to Divine Vintage on Instagram and look through and pick some items. So one last question I have for you before we wrap things up is, how do you set the prices for the items that you sell?
Yeah, so that's kind of a tricky question, to say the least, because I still obviously have morals in doing all of this, so I want to make sure that pricing is fair to everybody, and that I'm not charging an astronomical amount, but that I'm also not shorting myself of some money. So most of the time it's just a matter of there's going to be a baseline for shirts. Shirts are going to sell somewhere between $15 and $25, maybe even more if it truly is a vintage piece from the 90s. Maybe a Grateful Dead t-shirt, or just a really cool old hard rock piece, or something like that. But then again, you still have to realize a lot of times I'm paying no more than $10 for a shirt, and if I want to double my profit, sell it for 20 or 25, but you don't want to really go way too high and overcharge somebody. So a lot of times it's a piece-to-piece basis, and it's in your head as the seller, just knowing what's fair. And like I said earlier, determining that price a lot of the time is just seeing what the buyer has in mind. If they message me and say, hey, how much for this long sleeve Carolina shirt, or hey, how much for this Adidas windbreaker? Well, a lot of times my response is just throw me an offer. I'm always down to talk prices. I have a price in mind, but I'd love to hear what you think. And then, a lot of times somebody's going to respond back and say right around what I was thinking. They might say 20, I might have been thinking 25. And I'll say, hey, well, I was thinking a little closer to 25. Could you maybe meet me at 22? Or sometimes, not to say that I get lucky, but sometimes I'm fortunate enough that maybe somebody wants to pay $5 more than I really was going to ask, and that might be that top threshold that I'd be comfortable, I guess, morally selling somebody an item at. So I might want 25 for the item, and they say, I can do 30. How does that sound? Or I can do 35. How does that sound? And a lot of times I'm going to say, yeah, that's perfect with me. Or even sometimes if they did offer 35 and maybe I think it really shouldn't be much more than 30, I'm going to say, hey, well, look, even though you're offering 35, it's really not quite worth that much, and I wouldn't feel comfortable selling it to you knowing that it's really not quite worth that much. So maybe just meet me down at 30. And a lot of times they're extremely excited because they're not only going to pay $5 less than they thought they would and get the item that they want, but they're also going to, feel like it's much more personable than me just being someone that would be trying to take money from them. and being personable and always making sure that in the end the customer does always come first, then that produces return customers, and that produces, high customer satisfaction that then gets you sales from them again, but also gets you sales from people that they refer.
All right, Grayson, well, thank you so much for talking to us. I've definitely been enlightened on how this whole thrifting business is working, and I'm excited to see how it grows in the next few months, and I hope that you get a lot more customers looking to buy things, and I hope that it just keeps expanding like you planned it to.
Yeah, thank you very much. If you guys are interested in following or checking out what I have, like I think Josie might have mentioned in the beginning, it's just divine.vintage on Instagram, and I do post both Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. So I try to do a Sunday and a Monday batch, and then a Wednesday and a Thursday batch, and most of those are posted between 6 and 7 o'clock at night Eastern time. And I do ship as well, so if any of you listening are wanting to get an item but you might be a little farther away, shipping is definitely a possibility. So I thank you guys. Josie, thanks again for having me, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.